Auto layout is one of the most powerful tools that have been ever created for designers, for digital designers. Figma did that, and since then, you know what, it's such a beautiful collaboration between designers and developers because of the auto layout. It's just mind-blowing. And it saves hundreds of hours of designers' time because now everything is responsive. Absolutely everything that you can create will be responsive depending on the size. So you create and work with dynamic content when you're creating, for example, your website. When you are changing text, you want the shape of the button, for example, to change as well. And previously, to do that, you had to change the shape, you change the text. You change the text, then you change the shape again. So much time were wasted for these moving pixels back and forth. Today with auto layout, you work with paddings, margins. It's so much better and so much faster. As you can see, I don't have any examples here, the predefined examples for you, because I'll show you on practice how to what is auto layout, how to create one, and how to work with that and all its features. Okay, later in the specifically in the efficient web design module, we will create almost all the elements that we'll create will be using auto layout. Today I'll show you just a couple of examples so you understand what is that. When we start working with them in that future modules, I will not spend time on explaining how to use this or that. I'll just do the stuff. You just follow me and you will achieve exactly the same results that you will see on the screen. What is auto layout and how to find it, actually, how to create it? Well, the best way to see and understand auto layout is to create one. So let's create one. Let's type the text here. We'll start with the text, yeah. And this text will be button. This is pretty common example that people use to explain auto layout because it's probably the simplest way to explain that. And that's why I'm using here similar example, but I will explain it a little bit different way so you can understand it finally, like from top to bottom. Let's use the typeface that you already have, something like Enter. We have a button, and to create an auto layout, you just press Shift A, or you click right button of your mouse or the touchpad and click here Add Auto Layout. Shift A. And once you click, you will see Auto Layout Edit. And once you created an auto layout, you will see the panel on the right side. You will see an additional panel called Auto Layout. And also, in addition to that, here at the top panel, you will see additional two functions added, like vertical and horizontal resizing. How it works, we'll discuss just in a minute. Well, let's still take a look also at our layers group. In the layers, before we created an auto layout, we just had text. But when we created auto layout, Shift A, it creates frame. The only thing that it has a little bit different icon here, as you can see. And inside of this frame, you have a button. Let's call it auto layout so you know that we are working with auto layout. Auto layout. We have an auto layout, and inside we have text. Let's remove this text so it will be much easier for you to see exactly the layers here, because auto layout topic is pretty difficult for lots of people, and once you understand that, you will become super efficient. So that's why I want to remove and hide everything that you don't have to see right now. Let's focus on auto layout. So we have, this is our main frame, parent frame on a canvas. And inside we created an auto layout out of this text. it shouldn't be only text. You know what? You can create shape, and let's use circle, and then press Shift A, and now this shape is inside of the auto layout. So keep it in mind that it's not only about text, it's about everything. Everything can be inside of the auto layout. So we have button here. Shift A, we created auto layout, and then we see all the elements here. And if I select text itself, then you see that all the panels, everything is the same, but again, in the top panel here, we have two additional functions for resizing: horizontal resizing and vertical resizing. How it works and what does it mean? To see that, let's add one additional thing. We will change the text itself, the color of the text, to white. Now I select the auto layout here and I change the color of it to blue, because in this case you will see exactly what's happening. So now you see that auto layout itself is blue and the text is white, and you see some kind of additional lines here, and when we hover them we see also sizes. Well, these lines are called padding. Padding is the distance between the edges of the container and the element inside of this container. Our container is auto layout. Basically, auto layout is a container. Think about it as a box, just like a box, and inside of the box, well, let's do it here. This is our box, and inside of this box I put text. Now, what is padding? Padding is the distance between text and all the edges of this box. You can even take a box, the actual box from your shoes, put something inside there like your phone, and you will see that the phone is inside. The phone itself is a content, and the distance between the phone and edges of that shoe box will be padding. Everything outside, let's imagine that you have two phones and two boxes, shoe boxes. The distance between this box and this one is called margin. This is margin. This came from web design, and it's really great to know, especially if you're working with landing pages, if you are designing websites. It's better to know the box model and how it works, what is outline, what is padding, margin, and again, this is padding. This is the distance between the content inside of the box and the edges of the box. The distance between edges of two boxes, and the box can be another text. Let's imagine that I put just text here. So this is also margin. Margin is the distance between elements, the outside distance between the elements. Padding is inside of the box. Outline is the outline, like a stroke here, of the element itself. And that's the entire box model. Content, padding, the box, edges of the box, and its outlines. Sometimes we don't see outlines, we don't have them, but basically we still have the element somewhere here, and we still can have paddings, but we just don't see outlines. But doesn't mean that they don't exist. Like in this case, if I turn off the fill layer, we still have auto layout, but we don't see it. We just see text, but we still have the everything around. So here, the same box model. Auto layout is our box. Auto layout is our container. Inside of this container, we can put text, we can put additional shape, we can add any other shape, we can add even star here, whatever you want, and it will be inside of the box, inside of our container. Now, some other things that we need to know about auto layout. Here, as you can see, we have some arrows. Let's go one by one, exactly as we did in our previous lessons. We have arrows, vertical layout, horizontal layout. What does it mean? When we have horizontal layout selected, it means that everything that we create inside of this box will stretch our box horizontally. It means that I create another element and then the button will be created on the right. I create another one and they will be created again and again and again to the right. They will go to the right. If for our auto layout is vertical layout is selected, then when I create the element, it will be created from top to bottom, vertically. We need vertically when we are creating landing pages, section after section, or when we created list of elements. Let's imagine your contacts on your phone. And we need horizontal one in the elements, like if you want to create, let's imagine carousel, and it will be slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, etc. Let's remove this one. Then it will be like that. And in this case, it seems like, yeah, but how sliders will work in this case? Well, let's imagine that you created a card that will be your card or slide or whatever. You put this card inside of the auto layout, Shift A, and now you select the card itself and you press when the auto layout set in the horizontal layout position. Now you select the card inside, Command D, Command D, Command D, and this is how you create carousel. When you create, let's imagine a landing page that has multiple, not only landing page, any web page or any mobile page, and you put it into the auto layout and the layout set to vertical, you select element, Command D, Command D, Command D, all the sections will go down. And that's exactly what we need when we need to create a scrollable, when we have lots of content and we create a scrollable vertical content. This is what you need to know about these functions that goes here. The next element that you can see here is horizontal space between items. As you can see here, by the way, Figma has, as you can see, I'm hovering and you see exactly on the canvas what's happening, that it shows me what the size, what the size means. These purple rectangles that you see, pink rectangles that you see between slide 1, slide 2, slide 3. Horizontal space between items. And I can change it because, as you can see here, I don't understand like where the distance between slide 1, slide 2, slide 3. But when I set the horizontal spacing to 40, now I see it clearly. Where is that? Same happens with our card. Remember that. So we have this element, Command D, Command D, Command D. I select the spacing, I change it. Now it's bigger. This is how it works. Now let's take a look at two other things, horizontal padding and vertical padding. We already talked about them. You understand what padding is. Padding is the distance between the element and its edges. The edge at the top, the edge on the right, the edge on the bottom, the edge on the left. And by default, Figma shows you just horizontal padding and vertical padding. So you can change it to something different. This is specifically looks cool when we have button here. Let's imagine learn more button. So then we want horizontal padding to be something like 10. The horizontal one 80 and the vertical one is like 20. Learn more button created. We'll just add rounded corners for our button. Done. So this is how we create buttons using auto layout. Why auto layout is better than anything else? Because now when I change the text to anything else, you see that the size of the shape behind is changing as well. Because the text is dynamic, the shape is dynamic as well. That's why it's so powerful. Okay, but what if I want the left side to be a little bit shorter and the right side to be wider? And so basically different edges, different paddings. Then I'll click on this icon, individual padding, and then I'll set the left one to 40, the top one to 10, the right one will be 80, and the bottom is 20. Looks weird, but in some cases that's exactly what you need. You need, for example, a little bit more space on the right, or in the case with Helvetica typeface, specifically Helvetica New LT Pro, if I set everything to exactly, as you can see, you can type this way, the paddings, through a comma, and then you will achieve the same result. But let's imagine I want to have the same, 40 and 20, like 80, 20. And as you can see, it looks like, it shows me that the padding is 20-20, but why the distance between the top edge of the text and the top edge of the button is smaller than the bottom one? Because the typeface itself has its own padding, and the bottom padding is much bigger than the top one. So keep it in mind. This is exactly for the outer layout, where you, for the outer layout, can type 20-16 to make it a little bit smaller, or 12 to achieve the right position here. This is how it works. So 80, 80, 20, 12 to achieve the right position here. That's why I used Inter, because Inter has absolutely the same padding from top and bottom, and this is how you achieve this look. Okay, we discussed everything that we see on this panel except but this element. This is alignment. Align bottom right, align. So you will see all these different types of alignments. How does it work? Well, when we have more elements inside, buttons, shapes, and everything, and we select this element, everything goes from top left corner, exactly as it's shown here. Align top left. If I set align bottom right, everything that has space to jump there will jump there. If I set center, then everything will be aligned in the center. Where do you need to use this thing? Well, it's pretty common example where every single website starts with that, where you have heading, where you have description or paragraph, description here. Heading, of course, is a little bit bigger. This is our description below. On the right side, you have an image. This is your text. This is your image. Let's choose randomly from the minimal. And I'll immediately close that. I have no idea what's that. Let's change it, because honestly, it's better to see when you visually enjoy what you are creating. You enjoy it much more. I still don't like the examples. Perfect. That's a great example. So we have the image. Let's put it outside of our frame. You created this hero section that starts from heading, then description. Here you will probably have button. We can take the button from here. Just remove everything that we don't need. So this is our one element. Let's put it into the auto layout. Shift A. Yes, you can add more layers inside. We'll put these elements together. Shift A in another auto layout. Let's change it just visually, the distance between these elements, the distance between button and everything. So now this is my hero section. I select the image on the right, I select the left content, the content on the left, and I add another auto layout, Shift A. And now, because the align set to left center, this element is aligned, like horizontally, is aligned with the image itself. If I set it to top left corner, then the content will start from the top left. If I set it to the middle, at the center of everything, you see that nothing has changed. But it's only because our auto layout setting for the width is set to hug. So it hugs the content. We'll discuss it in a minute. But if I change the size of it to, in this case, to fixed instead of hug, now all the content sits exactly in the middle, to the top and in the middle. And if I right now change the distance between these two elements, between the left part and the right part, everything starts from the center. And if I create another thing, if I set it to top right side, everything will jump and will be attached to the top right side. Right center, and boom, everything is aligned to the center. And now if I change the size of our auto layout of our section, everything will be attached to the right side. It's really important to understand how everything works here, because the more complex, even this element is already complex. And for some of you who is seeing auto layout for the very first time, it's like, oh my God, it's just what? It's too much. So that's why usually when people explain auto layouts, they explain them starting from just the button, like this, where you have one button, and even this element I'll remove. I'll just keep one auto layout with a button, because it's much easier. As I started explaining you in this module, we start from something simple and then we go further and further and further, and then from simple elements we can create something complex, like we just did. The entire section was created using a couple of auto layouts. We will talk about everything, all of them, in the web design and mobile app modules. Now let's continue our journey exploring what auto layout is. Auto layout is also really hard to understand if you don't actually practice it. So my recommendation for you is to practice auto layout. Everything that I just created, everything that I just did, go and practice in Figma. Now let's go back to our element. One additional thing that I want to show you here with auto layout before we click on these advanced settings for the auto layout. When I type something here and change the text inside of the button, like learn more, you see that the text is moving to the right. Okay, probably it's because the text is set to text align left. Let's set it to text align center. I change that, I start typing, learn more, but it still goes to the right. What's happening? How is it happening? I want the text go from the right in the center, because let's imagine if I'm working with a 375 812, I'm designing a mobile application like this, and I have button inside of it, and the size of the button is 16 if I'm creating something like more real, or if you want to, yep, here. And now learn more, it goes to the right. Why? How can I change that? Well, what you need to understand that, remember when we talked about constraints? I designed this module, I designed this course the way where you follow lesson by lesson, one by one, And learning from the previous lesson, you get the knowledge from the previous lesson to use it in the next one. So that's why if you haven't watched the constraints module yet, go and rewatch it, because it's really important to use and understand constraints if you want to become efficient as a designer. The constraints set to left and top, and if you want your text to be to go from the center, you have to set the constraints to center. And now when I click learn more, it goes from the center. Even if I change the text to go from left to right, learn more, it goes from the center. So to make your text or just your auto layout grow horizontally or vertically, even vertically, let's imagine, learn more in this course, as you can see, it jumped down. Why? Because in the constraints we have it goes from top. But if I set from bottom, when I create the second line, learn more in this, enter in this course, you see it jumped up. The text is aligned to the left, so alignment for the text applies only for the text. If you want your auto layout grow from the center, then use constraints. Just keep it in mind. It's really the thing that lots of people don't understand, and they don't understand why their text is not growing from the center. And what they do in this case, I don't want you to waste your time on that. What they do in this case, so basically by default they have left top constraint. What they do, let's imagine by default they have the button and it was in the center. They change it to learn more. Then they take the button and put it in the center. And it takes time. And it takes time, and it's your precious time. If you want to be efficient, just learn these additional things, go through all the lessons, the previous lessons, so you understand how constraints work, and you understand absolutely everything. What we work with auto layout now. The next will be components. The next will be variants. These tools just allow us to make us a little bit, they make us a little bit more efficient. But everything else is super important. The fundamental part is super important for everything that we'll create in the future, and specifically for these lessons, for components lessons, and for variants lessons. So go and watch them, rewatch them again if you forgot something, or if you haven't watched the elements. Maybe you thought that, oh, I understand that. Just go and rewatch. Yep. So let's get back to our auto layout. So we have this button here. Let's go now to the advanced settings here. Advanced auto layout. Let's click. And here we see additional options like spacing mode, strokes, canvas stacking, align text baseline. How does it work? What does it mean? Spacing mode packed has only two options, packed or space between. How does it work? To understand it better, let's create another one. Let's type here logo. Let's create another element that's called navigation. Let's take the entire auto layout. Let's change the size of it. So the size is fixed. Everything is in the middle as we created. Let's go to default, top left. Everything is here. But now, if I go to advanced setting and set instead of spacing mode packed to space between, our navigation will jump to the right side. Figma will create the space, so all the elements that are inside of our auto layout will be positioned, attached to the left and right side of the element of the auto layout. And if we create the third element, it will be right in the middle. So if I create another element, Command D, it will be right in the middle. So now it can be logo, navigation, and on the right side it can be sign up. when you're creating, let's imagine, the navigation for your website, and this is how it works. Navigation, let's imagine, will be in the middle, the logo in the top left corner, and the sign up button that can be in another auto layout will be in the right side. We'll create the exact navigation, the perfect navigation in the web design model. This is just an example of what you can do here. We just created navigation using auto layout. And this is where you need to know that space between option. Now, strokes included in auto layout, excluded auto layout. This is not as necessary function, so don't spend too much time on it. If you want to, you can play with that. We'll discuss it also in the next model when we'll be talking about web design components. Now, canvas stacking. Last on top or first on top. How does it work? Usually, the best way to see that is, let's imagine that you have 3 avatars. Command P, unsplash, portrait, randomly added images. Now Shift A to add all these 3 elements inside of the auto layout. And now we will change the distance between these elements inside of the auto layout to the -1, like this. And if you take a look here, we have 3 images of avatars, 3 people here. And when we look at the layers, they go 1, 2, 3. And the layer 1 is, while in the layers, it's above all the layers here. So let's take all these layers and put them outside of the frame. So the layer that is above visually also goes above. So here, ellipse 1 is on top, but we don't see it. Here, ellipse 1 is on top, and we exactly see that. So when we select this option in the advanced setting, last on top, first on top, when I click on that, boom, now exactly how the layers showed here, we see them here. But it's super convenient when last is on top, because then you can create this type of content without thinking about anything. It will be already predefined for you, and you will create this component. And the final option is align text baseline. Where do you need that? Usually in the mobile apps, when you have, let's imagine that you have card and another card somewhere here, Shift A, and it starts from here. Let's put the spacing between these 2 cards, make it a little bit smaller, and let's create another card that goes there. And above we'll have something like recent release 24 semi-bold, and on the right side you have see more to see all of them, and for this one we will have something like 16. Now we have these 2 elements, we select them, Shift A, now we have auto layout. Let's change the width to something like this. Everything will be, we can set in the middle or just whatever we want. But then we go to advanced settings, set to space between. So now we know exactly that recent will be exactly starting from the left side and see more will be on the right side. And when I click here, align baseline, text on the right side is aligned to the baseline of the text on the left side. This is where you can use that if you want to achieve this effect. Because when we align texts, we align them by the X height or by the baseline, depending on the size of the text. If you want to know more about alignment of the text, typography master course explained that in full. So this is how you can use this additional advanced function Done. Created. Mind-blowing. Awesome. You just created one auto layout for the header. You create another auto layout for your swim lane, for your cards. You create another auto layout for the button. Then you can combine this auto layout into the auto layout, Shift A, and you can create another one. So we select the elements inside. So this is our auto layout. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add this auto layout, the card that includes heading and slider. I add it in another auto layout, Shift A. And this auto layout will be my main auto layout component. Then I press Command D and I created automatically another element, super fast and easy. So now I can select that one, change the distance between these two sections. I can include my button inside of all of these auto layouts. Put it down here. This is my section 1, section 2, then it goes button. This is my full design. So basically it can be my full design, so that's why I remove it. But this is my main design, and this is iOS app. I change the color field to white. Then I set everything inside to go from the top, for example, depending on what exactly the result that I want to achieve. The distance from the sides I want to be 24, so that's why it goes here. Then all the elements, if I want them to be aligned perfectly, clip content to hide everything that is outside. Then if I want to align them, I will set a specifically additional auto layout, additional frame to align the elements together. But we will talk about all these things in the mobile application. But look at this. In just a couple of seconds, I created the patterns, the first like wireframes for the application that we were working. That's why it's important to know auto layout and its features. Now, yes, this lesson is pretty long one, but one more thing that I want to show and explain, because in my opinion, it's really important. Let's take our initial auto layout. Let's remove these guys from here. Remove the elements. Let's take here and let's discuss these two things, hug and hug. What does it mean here and what it means here? If I set the fixed width, it means that I can change the width of the content here. And now the width of our auto layout is fixed. It means that when I start typing something, the width of the auto layout doesn't change. The only thing that is that changes is the width of the text. If I want my text to be inside of the auto, then inside of my auto layout, then I have to set the setting hug contents. Then my container hugs the content that is inside. Now my content inside, now I'm talking only about, let's talk one by one. So we are talking right now about horizontal settings. We have fixed width and hug contents for our auto layout. Now let's talk about horizontal settings for our content inside. Content inside has settings fixed width, hug contents, and fill container. What does it mean? It means that when it hug contents, it just exactly, no matter what we type, it just hugs content. This works as auto width. When I set it to fixed width, you see that the settings has changed to auto hide. It means that now the width is fixed. And if I start typing something, then my content goes to the next line. This is how it works. This is when you set to fixed. So now the width of the text is fixed. That's it. And the final option is fill container. When I click fill container, you see that nothing has changed. But it's only because our size, our width of our auto layout is fixed, and now it's just 739. But if I start changing it, I see that the content inside keeps the paddings that we created and changes only its width. It's really, really useful when you are creating model screens, for example. When we start creating model screens in the efficient design web design module, we will use this function there. The same, now let's discuss, oh yeah, that's cool. So here we have our button, and as you can see, I have a button and its bounding box is fill. It fills the entire container up to the paddings that we set. If I want to change something here, first of all, I need to change the text to hack contents. Now the bounding box set to auto width. Now I select my button and change the width to hack contents. Boom. This is how we got back to our default state. This is how horizontal spacing works. Now, the same with the vertical one. We have text, and if I set horizontal settings to fill container, it means that if I change the width of my button here, and let's imagine that I have, you see the bounding box of the text has changed. So when I start typing, that's it. It changes. So I change the width of the button. The best way to show it honestly here would be not to use the text, but to use the shape. So you see what's happening. When I'm changing the width of the container, not with height, the shape inside, when it's set to fill container, I change the height of the container of the auto layout, and my content inside changes its height as well. But if I set for the content inside the fixed height like this, now if I change the height of my container, the content inside doesn't change its height. And the final thing, yeah, fill container is like this. And the final thing, when I select here hack contents, it means that if I change the content inside, the height of the auto layout will change as well. This is where we can play with button that goes into lines. In this case, we have hack content, and because of that, no matter how many lines I have, the height of the button will change. If I set the auto layout to fixed height and start changing it, the content inside, as you can see, it goes outside of our auto layout. Hack contents, boom, now it's inside. When we start creating real elements, we already created some of them, but when we start creating them more and more and more in mobile apps module and also in web design module, you will see exactly how I'm using it, so you will be able to repeat after me and achieve the same results that I will achieve. And by the end of those modules, you will be able to create any type of website, any type of landing pages, and any type of mobile apps. This is all the features, we just discussed all the features of the auto layout. Now, just go and practice. Start with something super simple like text and shape from the very beginning, exactly as I showed you, and go and click through each of these icons. What will happen here? What will happen here? What if I change this setting? Okay, nothing changes. Add another element to see what will happen. Okay, I see now. What will happen here? What will happen with horizontal spacing? What will happen if I set fixed width and start typing here? Oh, and start typing something inside. Got it. So if I select auto layout is set to hug contents, boom, it takes the entire space. And go, what if, and go and practice. Auto layout is one of the most powerful tools ever created. So that's why my recommendation to you is to learn this tool, go through this lesson again and practice, because we will use auto layout in the future models. We'll use a lot. So that's why go and practice, and I'll see in the next lesson where we'll start creating components. Components we'll use in all the modules, and then we'll use and create variants, and I'll show you later how to use variants. See you in the next lesson. Oh yeah, I was waiting for this lesson, because in my opinion, the second most powerful tool in Figma is components. What is a component? Component is a master frame that allows you to create instances out of this master frame that will have the properties of the master. A little bit hard to understand, but let's take a look. Examples will show you what exactly is happening. Take a look at this circle here. Well, I created this circle not using ellipse tool, but the rectangle tool, and also rounded corners. As you can see here, 300 by 300, and the corner radius is 150. So here, I just took this element that I created and copied it to the design that you have here on the right side. Let's take a look what will happen if I change for this specific element, if I change the color of it. Look what's happening in the design. You see that the changes apply to instances as well, to the copies that I created out of this element. Another thing, let's imagine the corner radius to 40, and boom, everything has changed here immediately. Where to use components? Well, you can use them in graphic design, in web design, in mobile apps. The main idea, for me at least, you can follow the same approach. If you're going to use the same element somewhere else in your designs, and that new element should follow the same changes, the same properties of the master element that you created, then create components. Let's make it easier. If you're gonna use one same element, more than one time in your design, I recommend you to create components, because it will be much easier for you to make changes later. What is also cool about components in Figma, that you can change instances, like kind of the children of your master component, without changing the master component itself. How it works? Let's imagine we have these elements here. I click Command P, unsplash, and choose here portrait. And boom, now I have, for all those elements, I have the photos of these incredible, amazing people. Looks great. But now let's imagine I decided, okay, we have these photos, but we decided to change the style of our design, and we want to have all the avatars, all the photos, all the highlights, all the similar elements to be rounded, like to be ovals, not rectangles with rounded corners. You just take the master component, you change it to ovals, to oval, and boom, that's it. It applies to the entire design. This is how powerful components are. Again, if you're gonna use the element more than one time in your design, I recommend you to create a component. Well, 2 times, maybe you don't have to create a component. I would still do, probably, because it will be much easier for me to change it in one place rather than selecting 2 elements and make changes in both of them. But if you're going to use it more than one time, I recommend it to use a component. Let's take a look at another example. Here I have a card that I created using auto layout. You already know how to use auto layout. Simple shapes like a rectangle for the background, rectangle for the photo, and also I used text. 4 pieces of text, as you can see: eyebrow, heading 3, description, and learn more. And that's it. This is my card. And then I converted the card, that is auto layout, into a component. Then let me show you how it works. So I created this component. How to create a component, I'll show you in just in a minute. I just want to show you the power of it so you understand, oh my God, maybe I have to start using components because it will make my workflow much more convenient, faster, easier, more efficient. So I created this master component. Now I duplicate it holding Option key, or if you are using Windows, then it will be Alt key. Dragging here inside of my design. Now holding Option and Shift, I duplicate it one more time. Let's set to 40. And duplicate it again 2 times. Now I have, as you can see, I have the element, and then I created 4 copies of this element. But what's cool, because it's a master component, now I can change the radius here, and the radius changed here as well in my design. The next thing, let's imagine I decided to use here a little bit smaller size, like 36, and it changes absolutely everywhere. Let's imagine here I decided to use not the blue color, but a gray one. And it changes absolutely in all of my components. But at the same time, in all the copies of this component. But at the same time, I can change the text here. Change colors. Change corner radius, and so on and so forth. Not everything can be changed in the children. We will talk about it later when we'll be working with, when we'll start creating specific components and specifically in web design module of this course. But here, what you can change, the most important things, like the most basic things, you can change them. And at the same time, if you decide later to make some changes in your master, you will see changes in the children or like in instances that you created as well. Even if you changed the text, even if you changed something in the children, at the same time, you can change, again, you can change even images here. Let's switch to something like minimal, or no, let's go with abstract to make it look cool. Yeah, like that. Looks awesome. Another thing, you can also change effects in your master component. Let's imagine that for this design you have blue background like this, but now you don't see shadow while you have shadow. You can't see it here in your design. In order to do that, you just go select your master component, you make the changes here to blue shadow 50, and let's make it a little bit taller here. Now you see the shadow. And another thing that I'm gonna do in my master component is to change the smoothness of the cards to make them, yeah, I'll choose iOS style. Look what we just did. I made these changes here, but everything has changed here. So basically I make the changes in one master component, and all the instances, all the copies that were created out of this master component also has changed. And that's the biggest power of a component. of components. Now, how to create a component? Let's take a look at real examples. So let's imagine that you created your card. It's already a component. By the way, what's cool to know that you can put the master component inside of the master component. And let me show you how it works in general. So I created this card, and then I converted it into a master component. Then I made lots of copies here. But let's create a component together with you right now. Add it to this component and see what will happen. And later I'll show you what else you can do with components. So for this exercise, how to create a component, let's do this. Press F, create a frame 20 by 20. In this case, boom, just a frame 20 by 20. And let's call it icon because we'll create icon here. Now select O, press O, and create a circle 12 by 12 inside of your frame that you created. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this circle, Command D. I want to make it smaller, like 6 by 6. Select both of them. And now I go here and press subtract selection. You already know how to do all these things from the previous lesson. So this is an exercise for you, a little bit more complex, but this is an exercise for you where you can use all the knowledge that you get from the previous lessons. Now, when I have this element, I press and hold Command key or Control and select the circle on the background. Or you can just simply click on this arrow here and select ellipse 1. Once you selected ellipse 1, press Enter or Return key on your keyboard, and you will see all these dots. Select this dot at the very bottom, hold Command or Control key on your Mac, Command on your Mac keyboard and Control key on Windows, and click one time on this dot. You will see that this sign, like 3 dots below the cursor. Once you click, you will see that these handles disappeared, and also now it's not a curve anymore. It's like you have a sharp angle here. While the dot is selected, press 1, 2, 3, 4 times arrow down. Now select this dot here, press 2 times down, select another dot here, select this handle and press 2 times down. Press escape 2 times. That's it. You just created an location icon. Yeah, when you want to create a location icon, this is how you can do that. Later you can make some changes if you want to, but currently we created this location icon that we're gonna use in our card. Currently it's a frame, just a frame. It's not a component, just a frame. And inside of this frame, we have the IC location. Sometimes you can see that I name layers as this one, for example, IC, then underscore location. Well, because I have development background, I started naming icons the way they will be used for developers. Developers will use exactly this naming, and IC in this case means icon, and location means the name of this icon. You can, if you are following different conventions, you can call it location, while the frame itself that you're going to use, it can call it icon/location. In this case, icon will be a folder, and inside of this folder, you will have location as an icon. I'm not going to use it here. We'll just call it icon. Later, when we'll start working with web design, I'll show you how to name, how to use these folders and everything. This is not part of fundamental stuff. It's more complex, it's more advanced technique, so that's why I want to explain it a little bit further. Currently, we're just creating a component. So Once the frame is selected, to create component, you can follow one of these three methods. You can create components from 3 places in Figma. I don't know why they made it so from like different perspective, but anyway, it's super convenient. Well, while the frame is selected, to create a component, you just can click here. You see, create component at the very top in the middle. You can press right click, create a component from here. Or simply you can see that there is a specific shortcut for that. On Mac, it's Command Option K. And I recommend you to, once you saw anywhere the shortcut, immediately apply it. Memorize them, keep them in your memory, because this way you will become super efficient, super fast when you're using shortcuts. That's why they called shortcuts. They make your workflow much more efficient and faster. So I'm pressing Command Option K, and boom, you see that the color changed from blue to purple, and the frame icon itself changed from the hashtag, from the cell, to these 4 diamonds. What's cool about that now when I press Option and I create the copy of it, of this element, you see that now the icon is a diamond, but just 1 diamond here, icon. And this is how to understand the difference between the master component and its instances. Master component has 4 diamonds, and instance has just 1 diamond here. Now, one more thing to keep in mind. If you change the name of your master component, the name of your child, the name of the instance that was created out of this master component will change as well. So currently I have it name icon. Let's call it, I don't know, icon location. And now you see that the name has changed here. But when you change the name of the icon of the instance, icon location 1, it doesn't affect the name of the master component. Just keep it in mind. Now, what's cool about all these things? We created a component. It means that now, if I change the color of it, the color will change here as well in the instance. If I change the size of this element here, it will change in the instance as well. Let's take this instance and put it inside. As I told you already, this is a component. You see these 4 diamonds here. This is a component. And I put this component inside of my design here. But when I click and add an additional, you know what? Let's do one change here. I press Command D, press here London, UK, for example. Now you see that I have additional line in all of the cards, contact cards that I created. Now when I put my icon inside of the design, it's a little bit harder for me to navigate just because I'm too far. One more thing here that I forgot to do is I will add here, in order to add, what I wanna do, I wanna add icon in front of the London, UK. In order to do that, I need to change the line into auto layout itself, because currently if I add it here, it will just go as stack, it will go down. I want them to be together, so that's why I select London, UK, I press Shift A. This is how we create auto layout. I remove padding horizontal and vertical one. I change the spacing between elements inside of the auto layout to 2. I took the icon that we just created, the component, put it here, and boom, now this icon in all of our designs. The only difference, the only thing that I don't like here, that the icon grabs too much attention, it's too big, and also has too much space from left and right. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna select this master component that we just created. I'll bring this design so you see the changes immediately here. I'm going to change the width of this frame, the width of the master component. So I press Option Command, and when I change it, boom, you can see it jumped immediately. It became smaller everywhere. Let's do this again. Bigger, smaller. But the icon still is too big. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select the icon itself inside, and I'm going to change it. The size of it, I'm going to make it smaller, like this. Done. So now it looks much better. And later, if I decide to go with a different style of the icon, if it will be not the field icon, but stroke icon, how to create icons in different styles we will talk about in graphic design module. And it goes, by the way, the next module. If I press here Shift X, now the style of my icon has changed as well. Of course, I don't like how it goes here, so that's why I'm gonna select the circle inside and I'm going to make it smaller. I'm gonna make it 2 by 2. And for these icons, you can see I'm not having a round number. Now it's 8 by 1067. I'm gonna make it 8 by 11. Now I have this icon. Because it's a master component, we see changes in our another master component that we created for our designs. And all the changes that I'm going to do here in the master component, they will be applied to all the elements in our design. Now this circle is just a little bit small. Boom, done. So that's how to create a component and how to apply them to your designs. Let's create, I created for you another example. Just follow me step by step what I'm doing. Now let's create a component, a button component. Type button, press Shift A, Shift A, correct. Yeah, I pressed Shift X. So press Shift X, change the name, double click here, or just simply select and press Command R. Change it to button. Change the color of the button to whatever you want. I will use the blue one. Change the text of the color to whatever you want. I will use the white one. Now for this element, vertical padding 8, horizontal one 40, corner radius 4. I just created button here. Now I'm gonna change the size to medium, the weight to medium, and that's it. So I just created, similar to the auto layout to the previous lesson, I created a frame. I created an auto layout button. It means that when I start typing something here, the button grows exactly like horizontally, exactly what I need. But now I select this auto layout and I put this auto layout into a component. I convert this frame, by the way, auto layout is also a frame. I convert this frame into a component, create a component. Now it's my master component. I can see it in the layers panel. Now I take this master component, and here I already created this section that consists of just an auto layout. Inside of auto layout, I have another auto layout for this text. Inside of auto layout, I have another auto layout just for the text. So basically this is my section. This is the text that I have. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this element here and I'm going to bring it inside of my section. Now when I select this section, I see that we have button inside of our editorial content. I can put it, by the way, outside here. So we will have editorial. Yep. But as you can see, because for this section, we have the positioning align top center. I'm going to change it to align top left. And now I'm going to change the position of this element down. Previously, I showed you how to put it down, how to move the layer down in the layers panel, just keeping like using mouse or trackpad. It's time to use shortcuts for that. In order to do that, press Command, Option, and arrow down or up to move the position of the layers inside of the layers panel. Command, Option, down or up on Mac. Control, Alt, arrow down or arrow up on Windows. So arrow up. Now the element is here. Now I take my section here. The distance between elements I want to have 20. And now I have the section with a button inside of it. What's cool about all these things that we just created? First of all, we have a section. And this section is inside of auto layout. It means that if I create another section, Command D, boom, it jumps down and we have another same section here. But I'm not going to do it right now this way, because now you are more efficient, you are much better designer than you were like even 5 years ago. Today you know auto layout and now you know how to create components, and we just created a component for this button. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a component out of this section. Exactly, I'll just take the section and I'll create a component inside of my design. So I press this button or Command Option K, and now I have a component. And as you can see, once I create the component, this button jumped out of the design that we created. Why so? Because once you're creating a component, the master component is always outside of other master component. And just keep it in mind, even here, when we created a component section here, my recommendation to you is duplicate this element, Command D. Now take and select your master component and move it out of the design. This is my recommendation to you when you're working with components. Keep your master components separate from your designs. First of all, it will be much easier for you to understand what is a master component and what is not only by the icon, but because you put them in a particular position on your layout. And now you know that if I change something here, it will change the instance in your design. But also it will be much easier for you to add later when we'll start creating components library, when we'll start creating design systems. You will be able to put these components in your components library. And then you know where is this master component, where is this first element that impacts all the changes that will be applied to all the instances. So keep it in mind that it's up to you. You can keep them in your design, but it will be just easier for you to work when your master component is outside of your main design. In Figma, what's also cool, if you don't understand, if you don't know where the master component is, when you select the instance, in this case, this section, right click, you will find here the button, go to main component. When you click on that, you will jump directly to your main component. This is how it works. And now, because we created a master component for a button, because we created a master component for a section, we can use these components in our designs and improve our workflow. So what I'm going to do now, I selected section here, Command D, Command D. Now I have two sections. And for the second section, let's imagine that I'm going to use the gray color for the background to create, the rhythm, the color rhythm, and people understand that, okay, that was section 1, section 2. I'm changing in section 3. Now, if I change anything here in my master component, the changes will apply to everything that I have in my design. I'm going to change the size of this heading to 36. The changes applied. Now, another thing that I want to show you when we are talking about components, when you have lots of elements inside of your components, like in this case, we have 3 pieces of text, eyebrow, section, and description, and then we have button, so 4 pieces. When you delete anything in the component instance here, it will not be deleted. It will be hidden. Let's do that. I'm gonna delete right now the button. For example, I don't want to have button in the section 2. I press delete and boom, it's not here anymore. And because we're using auto layout, we have a beautifully created section that has perfect paddings and everything, but we don't have button now. But if I select this section again, I see that the button is still here, but it's hidden. If I press on this eye icon here, it will appear again. So basically I can press delete here, or I just can hide this layer in my instance, and that's it. But if you delete the item in your master component, it will be removed from all the instances and from the master component as well. Command Z to bring the button back, because let's imagine we're gonna use that. Now take a look at our design. We have our design created, and let's imagine for the third section, I'm not gonna use eyebrow, I remove it, and now I have all the sections, and the first one can be, hey, John. Here you have a description, or because we have a button here, it means that this is kind of our CTA, so we wanna bring people somewhere. Start investing today. Invest now. I'm changing everything here. Now here, why us? Here you can change about company. And this section can be your benefits. This is not a mobile application. As you can see, this is a mobile version of the website. When you create it, let's imagine the desktop version of the website, and then it's responsive. How to create that, we'll talk in the web design module. And then you have a mobile version of that website that you created. Boom, you just created the entire design using one master component here. And we also use the master component there. If I click on clip content, I will see what's happening like further here in the design. Currently, I just want to see these things here. And let's imagine that, okay, I don't need so much text here. Let's imagine I have just 2 lines. But now everything, all the changes that I'll do, all the changes that I'm going to make in my master component, they will be applied to my designs. So basically, if I decide that we don't see eyebrows now and we don't highlight where the person is, so you select the eyebrow, you change its color, let's imagine to blue, and now everything, all the eyebrows will change here as well. By the way, if you want to, you can bring back the eyebrow here, and let's change it to benefits. Now you want to have your eyebrow to be, it's semi-bold, let's change it to bold. Now everything has changed in your design. Now you decided that your CTAs will not have rounded corners, it will be just straight bottom, enter. Now it's right corners. Or maybe you decided to go in a different direction and to have it rounded, and you want it to be kind of black color. This is how fast and easy to make changes in your designs using master components. And why I'm using the master component, why I created a component here, because I was going to use the same element more than one time in my design. So this is one element, and then I have same elements or similar. Basically, I can create the entire website as a master component, the entire page, and then remove, like copy it multiple times. You can do that, by the way. And then you just remove the sections that you don't want to and change them. Basically, you are creating one template for the entire website using components, and it will be super fast and easy for you to make all the changes. How to do that, how to create UI kits, we'll be creating UI kits in the web design module. We'll talk about it in one of the next modules of this course. But now you see the power of master components, and now you see, not master components, it's just a component. The power of components and the power of auto layouts and how to become super efficient. Just by this lesson, I'm pretty sure that you are a much better designer than you were even yesterday. And I'm proud of you. And now we are ready to dive into a little bit more complex topic, which is called, well, it will be the second lesson, the second video, it will be right under this video. For the components, we'll be talking about components properties. It's more advanced technique, but still I want you to know a little bit more about them before we create variants. Yes, in the next lesson you will learn what variant is. Then we'll add additional lessons. We'll talk about alignment, some additional things that I'll show you that you can find in Figma, or how to do this or that a little bit easier. But by this moment, right now, you already have everything you need for all of our next modules. For graphic design module, for content creation module, for web design module, for mobile apps module, and for game UI modules. Basically, you have absolutely everything. And if you're ready, just go to the next modules, just watch them. If you want to dive deeper into more advanced techniques, stay in this module. These videos will be here. Just watch them and become a better designer. I'll see you in the next lesson. In the first part of this lesson about components, you learned how to create components and what component actually is. Now, let's talk about one additional thing. Honestly, components themselves is already something from the advanced techniques, but we will dive a little bit deeper. I don't know what goes after advanced, but what you will learn right now in this part of the lesson about components will bring you to a completely next level of knowledge of Figma. So, what we'll learn today: components, properties, and how to use them. By default, not by default, but actually in Figma, you can have 4 different types of component properties. You can have the properties as many as you want to have, but types only 4. Well, what is a component property? How to work it? How to work with it? How to use it? Let's dive in. Remember, we created this component previously, and this component has text, another text, and it has a button. And this button was created out of this button, out of the previous component, out of another component that we created for this section. Before we create something else and start playing with this a little bit bigger component, let's create something simple, small, and discuss component properties on that simple example. We have a button here, and let's make it just a little bit more complicated, more complex, not complicated, but complex, and see what we can do later and what is a component property. In order to make it a little bit more complex, let's create 2 additional kind of simulations of icons. Not the actual icons, but something that represent icon. And these icons will be used in our button later. So I created a circle here, 10 by 10. Let's change, by the way, the color of it to white. And I'm going to create another element here, and it will be a square, 8 by 8. And now I'll turn both of them into a frame. How to do that? Well, the easiest way would be you can create component immediately out of it. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a frame selection, or Option Command G. Option Command G, and now you have a frame here. And I'll call this frame icon 1. And out of this square, I'll also create a frame, Command Option G. And now I'll call it icon 2. Now I'm going to change the size of these elements by holding Command and Option. Just take a look at the previous lessons. I don't want to repeat every single time, basic things that we already discussed before. So that's why, yeah, I'm just changing the size of my frame for the icon. And I make the frame size 16 by 16. Now when I create both of them, what I'm going to do, I'm going to convert them into a component. We could do that before, just simply create a component, but I want to show you one additional way what you can do in some cases when you already, for example, have a frame, when you already have lots of, like a set of icons, then you already have them as frames. Now you can convert them into a component. If you already know that you are creating a component, then just create component immediately. This will make your work a little bit more efficient. Well, now I'm converting it into this frame into a component. For this one, I will use this button. For the next one, I'll use Command Option K because, yeah, I'm showing different ways how to do that. Now we have two components, icon 1 and icon 2. What's interesting about these components that we could combine them as variants, but variants we will discuss in the next lesson. It will be a little bit different thing, and let's work with separate components right now. So I have an icon now. What I do now is holding Option, I bring this icon here, kind of icon. I change the position of all the elements so they will be in the middle of this button. Then I'm going to change the distance between the icon and text to 4 points. And another thing that I'm going to do, we will discuss it later in the web design module, but I'm also going to change the padding, the left padding of this button to achieve the optical balance, because currently the button doesn't look balanced. Because of our icon and text, it looks like it's a little bit, well, if you are already efficient in design, you already understand what is optical balance and the difference between the geometric balance and optical one. If not, yeah, I'll be happy to help you in my mentorship group. Well, what I'm going to do here, exactly on the left side, I'll change the padding to 32. Perfect. Now I have this button balanced. Everything is great. I would even set it to maybe 36. Yep, it's much better. Perfect. Now I have this button here. And now let's talk about component properties. What is that and how to use them? Well, in Figma, for the components, you can create properties. And these properties could be, we can have 4 types of properties. When you select a component, here on the right side, you will see additional panel properties, and you will have the plus sign, create component property. When you click on this plus sign, you will see variant, boolean, instant swap, and text. So 4 properties. We will not discuss variants here. We'll talk about them in the next lesson when we'll create variants. Today we'll discuss boolean, instant swap, and text. And let's start creating these properties and how to use them. Well, let's start with text. It will be really awesome to see the results. Once you start playing with component properties, you'll love them so much, and you'll you'll probably try to use them absolutely everywhere in all the components that you already created. I recommend you to think a little bit more about it before turning everything into component property. Just keep your work efficient. Not everything should be pixel perfect. Not everything should be converted into a component. Not everything should have component properties. But because the lesson is about component properties, so let's create a text property first. In order to do that, take a look at your component, find text there, and select it. If you want to select deep inside of the layer, you can click multiple times until you reach that specific layer, or you just can hold Command or Control on Windows and select the element inside of the frame. So I selected the text, and now on the right side you will see some additional icons will appear near the names of the panels. And near the layer panel there is one icon that says create Boolean property, and near the content, well, we have a new panel here, content. We have also an icon like a button, create text property. And because this element is text, and well, it doesn't, we can apply both Boolean and text, but let's play one by one so you understand exactly on simple examples how does it work and how to use it. Well, create text property. I click here, and then I see this model screen. Create component property, name and value. The value is the text itself, and the name is text here. But we want later, when we will work with these component properties, we won't easily understand what exactly we are changing. So that's why it's better for the name to have something descriptive that everyone will understand. Descriptive, but short. And that's why I'm going to change this name to button label. And that's it. Create property. And boom, now you see that here appeared button label. How to use that now? Well, it's interesting now that you will see also properties, button label here. But what's cool, remember we created already the button, we put that button inside of our another component. Now when we select another component and select the button inside of it, here we see additional option, button label. And now we don't need to go here to change the text of the button. We can change the text of the button directly from the label because we created a text property. What does it mean? That now we can change the text of the button from the properties panel. So I can change here something. I can type something here like invest in gold, enter, and the button has changed. How cool is that? Honestly, this is mind-blowing property, especially when you're working with, when you're creating landing pages, when you're creating websites, and if you're working with copywriters. In this case, copywriters will not jump into your design and will try to select every single text there and here and there. They will be able to change everything, all the text properties, right directly from the properties panel. And because now you know how to work and create text properties, we can create text properties inside of this big component. Let's do that. We have an eyebrow, right? I'm selecting an eyebrow, and here in the content area, I click on create text property, and I change it to the eyebrow text. Create property. I select section now, and here I do the same. create property. But now it's heading text, create property. Now I select description, click on this icon on the right side, create property, description, text, create property. Done. So now we have, when I select the component itself, now I have all these three properties here. But are you ready to dive a little bit deeper and learn one more Figma Pro secret? If the answer is yes, well, let me show you one additional thing. Here you have the plus sign, and as you can see, we have only three properties now. But when we click on the plus sign, here we also see nested instances. Well, inside of this component, we have another instance, which is button. And we already created for the button also a property. Can we change that property directly from properties of the main component without selecting button? Yes, we can. So I click on nested instances when the main component is selected. And now here I see the model screen, and on this model screen I see button. That's exactly the button that we had here, the instance. And when I click here on the checkbox, now I have additional, in the properties panel, I see the properties that applied to the component itself, but also to the nested instances. What does it mean? It means that now when I go to my actual design here, and I select this section inside, I see all the properties, text properties here. And I can change the text of each of the properties right from the properties panel. This is incredible and mind-blowing feature. This is the secret most people don't know at all. But what's cool about that it will make not only your workflow more efficient, but your entire design team will benefit from it, especially if you're working with copywriters, or one of you from your design team is a copywriter or UX writer, because they will be able to change all the text here, and they can write benefits here, press enter, and it changes in the design. They type here something like, if you like, do you like gold? And now you have a completely different heading right in your design. And then you have a description, and for the description, maybe you want to make, if yes, just don't wait and don't miss this incredible opportunity. Enter, and now we have the text inside of the design. And because we also showed the nested instances, we can change the text here for the button as well. So now it's invest now, but I will change it to something like I'm ready. Boom. Or learn more if you want to. Learn more. And the text has changed here, and I can do the same for every single, as you can see here, for every single component instance of the main component that we created. I can do all the changes of the text directly from the properties panel. Mind-blowing, right? And this is just one property. Let's go to the next one. And the next one is also mind-blowing. The third one, not so much, but the second one is super cool. And this property is Boolean type. So when you select an element near the layer panel, you have an icon, create Boolean property. Click on that, and you will see again the model screen. And for this model screen, you see name and value. And the value is true or false, because this is how Boolean operators work. True or false. Yes or no. Show or hide. Think about it this way. And here the name of this element, true or false, it just means that you will show this element or not. And in this case, because this is an icon, we will type not show icon 1, we will type show icon. And then create property. Now, when I select the button here, I see additional element here, show icon. And for the show icon, I can click here and then the icon will be hidden. As simple as that. I show and hide it in just one click. Instead of for me selecting this particular element and deleting it, well, like hiding it from the main panel here, from the layers panel. Instead of that, I just select the button itself and I show and hide it. I can select the main component again here, click on properties, show nested instances, and it shows button. But as you can see, there is no option here to show this additional option to hide or show boolean type. But when I select the actual element itself here, because we selected show nested properties before, we see this option here as well. We can see boolean type here again. And I can show and hide it directly here. This is how powerful and cool properties are, component properties are. We'll talk more about them in the web design module and mobile apps module, because I'll show you also how to create multiple properties of the same type, multiple properties for the same component and variants. So it will be a combination, and like we'll create something super flexible and mind-blowing. Now, let's create the third type before variants. Variants will be in the next lesson. Let's create the third type of component properties. And the third type, remember that we created two icons here, icon 1 and icon 2. Well, and inside what I have here, I have an instance of this icon. And now it means that I can select this icon and I create an instance property. And you will see it as a separate panel where you can select all the different modules when you select the element. Here you will see the drop down with all the modules, all the components that you have on this page. Or you can select them from libraries. We'll talk about libraries also later. So now let's select just our element here and let's create an instance property. So here you see the icon create instance swap property. I click here, name instance, yes. But for the name, we will select choose icon. This is what we'll type. This is what we want other designers or other people see when they work with this component. Choose icon, and here icon 1, and we can choose icon 2. But what's cool about this specific component, because we are creating instance swap component, I'm gonna add here, well, let's do that. Let's keep it as it is, and then I'll show you why it's cool to create a swap component and what this panel is for. So I create property, done. So now when I select here, when I select the button itself, I see additional property here, choose icon, and here we have icon 1. When I select here, I see all the possible options here, all the different components that we have on this page. And then I select icon 2 and done. So this is basically how I created the swap component. And as you can see, by default, like preferred, I see all of them, local components, Figma, like I see lots of different options. But what if I want to choose only between icons, nothing else, just icons? In this case, let's go back to our component property, instance swap. But now what we're going to do here, by the way, we can detach property. We can go to main component, that's for sure. But what I'm gonna do right now, I'm going to, where is it selected? Oh yeah, I'm going to select the main component here, and where we have all the properties of this component, I'm going to select and click. We can edit properties that we created. And here you will see the icon. By the way, we can remove them. We can delete properties if you want to, or we can edit them. And that's exactly what I want to do. I want to edit for the choose icon. I want to edit it to one additional thing. Here we have preferred values, and we can show as grid or as list, but here we have select preferred values. What does it mean? It means that I can add kind of folder in which we will choose the values from. Like this is the value icon 1, right? I can choose between all of these things. But when I create the preferred one as an icon 2, and now when I close it, so now when I select my button to change the choose icon property, when I click here, I see only 2 options. Of course, I can go to all other components, but by default, it will show me only what I selected as the preferred options. And it, of course, it saves lots of time. And again, because it's in another component and we use that another component in our actual design, we can select sections, and now we can choose icons here as well. And here, by the way, as you can see, we don't have like buttons because we removed them. What we can do, well, we covered already all 3 properties out of 4. The 4th one is variants. We'll talk in the next lesson. We covered 3. Now go and practice with create some components, create some elements, and practice create properties for your components. And one of the exercises that you can follow, well, all the things that I did in this particular lesson, but also what you can do, you can select the main component, like the complex one that we created here. Select the button itself. And while it's an instance itself, you still can create out of the instance, you can create a property because this instance is part of the component. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create the Boolean type, create Boolean property, show button, yes, please, create property. So now when I select sections with properties, remember previously in the previous part of this lesson, we deleted like show and hide button. Now, because we created the property and it has it here as a property, I just click show and here we have it. Now I select the button itself and I change the icon to the second one, and instead of invest in gold, you know what? I don't want to see icon here. And instead of invest in gold, I will select go to about us. And that's it. This is how cool component properties are. In the next lesson, we will cover variants, what is variant and how to use them, and how to use component property variant. See you in the next lesson, and go and practice with component properties, because trust me, when you can create something like this, wow, can you imagine that you can just do so much stuff here? Hide buttons, add buttons, have more than one button. If you have, for example, the primary one and the secondary one, you can change text, you can teach or create a video, Loom video for other copywriters who are working with you, how to change text when you're sharing the file with them. That's how you change your life as a designer. This is how you become super efficient, super confident in your skills. And then, you know, with the confidence of the knowledge of the tool, your whole level of confidence will grow as well. And the more parts you'll make more confident, the more confident you will become in different areas of your life, the more powerful, the more, the better you will become as a designer. This is how you become great designer. You become confident in, you learn a lot of stuff. You become confident in it, in this stuff. And then you will be able to show others what others don't know. And they will be mind blown by your abilities of creating something, of changing the way you design. They will be mind blown by your creativity, and they will be mind blown by your efficiency and how fast you can create something using all the knowledge that we already covered. Can you imagine what will be next? What will be after all the modules of this course? Cool, right? So see you in the next lesson. We'll be talking about variants. We already covered auto layout, components, component properties. Do you feel that you become much better designer, more confident, more efficient already? And we just started, because in the next modules, I'll show you how to use all the knowledge that you got in these Figma fundamental modules. And then we'll create more and more and more. We'll use every single part that you learned here in the next lessons. But today we'll discuss one additional thing. It's called variants. And if you remember from the previous lesson, components have 4 different properties: Boolean type, text, swap instances, and variants. And variants was the only property we haven't discussed yet. What is a variant? Well, because it's a property of a component, you already understood. Well, variant is a property of a component. It's when you can have different states of the same component and you can switch between them. If it's still hard to understand, let's see how it works, what is that, and how to create one. Same component, different variants. As you can see here, I created this switcher icon, and it's a component. The state of this component is off. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna create another component with a state on. I just copy this element here. It's still off, but as you can see, previously we had master component, and this is instance. And I can't move anything here in the instance because it's attached to our master component. It's just instance. So what I'm gonna do, right click, detach instance. Now I'm gonna rename it, Command R, to state on. And for the state on, I will move this circle to the right side, and I will change the background to something like greenish, something like this. And I'm gonna also change the stroke color to this green one. So now I have the state on, but it's not a component. So let's create a component out of it. Create component. Now I have 2 components, off and on. And let's remove it from here. Let's take this component now and let's just move it inside of our design. And previously, if you remember from the previous lesson, to switch this component to the state on, I just go here and click on. So basically I'm using the swap instance, but there is a much more efficient way to do that. We can combine these 2 components as one group that we'll call switch, and this group has 2 states, on and off. Let me show you what I'm gonna do now. I'll show it schematically. So this will be our state off. This will be our, by the way, let's even call it state off 20. state on. So I have two states, on and off, and I want them to be as one group. Let's just change here the color. As one group, as one component that I will call switch. So switch, the switcher itself, will have two states, off and on, but I want it to be just one component called switch, where I can choose for the switch component which state to use in my design. How to do that? Let me remove this. So we have two components. What I'm going to do, I select both. And now on the right panel here in the right sidebar, you see a new button, Combine as Variants. When you select two components, you can combine them as variants. Later, I'll show you one additional way how to create variants, but let's go step by step. The first method, method 1, select create components, different states, select them, and press the button Combine as Variants from the right sidebar. Boom, we created variants. What is variant? Well, it's just a component that inside of it has other components, but basically all other components inside of this main component have variants of the same thing. As you can see, it's called component 1 now, and I'm going to change the name to switch, Command R. Now I press here switch, enter, and now I have inside of the switch panel two options, property 1, as you can see, two variants. And as you can see, it's property 1. What does it mean? Do remember that previously we discussed that there were 4 different types, right? Boolean, text, swap instances, and variants. And that's exactly what we do now. We work with property variant. And here, when I select this element or this one, I see them in my layers panel. But when I select the entire switch component, I see in the properties panel here two states, off and on, and the name property. I can rename it to something else, so everyone will understand when we'll work with variants. The more we will work with components and variants in the future modules with different real examples, the more you understand variants. Right now, just follow me step by step. So here I press, I rename it to this property name to switch. That's exactly what we had before. Remember from the previous lesson. So I could just click here in the edit mode, and instead of the name, instead of the property 1 name, I would write switch. Now I just double clicked here. It's just a little different way to do that. And here I have different values, the same as we had in the previous lesson for component variants. So now these are our properties off and on for the switch element. Now, because I moved this switch already to my design, as you can see, now I don't need to switch instances here. I just press on and off, and you see it works in my design. In the next lesson, I'll show you how to create interactive components, so you will see how it works, so even clients will be able to turn them on and off and play with them and see how different options work. So variants is a really cool and powerful tool that allows you to create different states of the same element, work with them while you're designing something, but at the same time use them in your prototypes. When you're creating UI animations, when you create micro interactions, we'll discuss them through the entire course. We will discuss interactive components in the next lesson, but you will learn much more from the Motion UI Design masterclass course that created specifically about UI animations, where you will learn absolutely everything about UI animations, Motion UI, micro interactions, everything will be there. So let's get back to variants. This is how it works. Does it work the same way? Like, is it always switch on and off? Well, no. Here's the thing. Let's create, right now, let's create another component. Let's create another variant just from the very beginning. So we don't have anything. Let's create everything from scratch. Let's create a button. So I press here text. I change the font to Inter. So probably you have this font as well. I press button, Shift A, so I create the outer layout. Remember, for this outer layout, fill color, I will use something like a yellow. On this side, what else I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make these settings, and also I'm going to change the corner radius to 10. Done. Actually 4. Much better. So here I have a button, and it's just an outer layout. It's not even a component. Let's rename it to button. Now I'm going to create a component first out of it, and then out of this button, I'll create variants. So to create a component, Command Option K. Now it's a component. And now previously I showed you how to create variants by selecting different components and combining them as variants. But there is another way to create a variant. Well, one of these ways is when you have a component, here you have the button Add Variant when you select it. And when you click Add Variant, the variant set will be created automatically. And another version, well, the component will be duplicated, and now you don't need to detach it from the instance, then create a component again. Everything is already created as a variant. And when you have a variant set already, you can press this button Add Variant, and the new button will be created. So I recommend you, when you're creating your components from scratch, when you don't have 2 components already created, I recommend you this way to create variants. So I created 3 variants. What are they for? Well, the first one will be our default state. And we can even call it default. Well, it's like default here. All right, perfect. The second state, let's call it hover. And here, when I pressed Command R, as you can see, it's not just variant here. Or when I double click, it shows property 1, variant 2. What does it mean? It means that inside of variant set, every single component that you have, it has here the name. And each name has property in it. And that's really important to understand, because if you want to change the name here, don't change the entire name. Change just everything that goes out after the equation mark. So here you can change the name here, or much easier and safer way, when you select a variant, change the name in the right sidebar. And this will be our hover state. When I hover the cursor on the button, then it will be our hover state. And for the hover state, I'm going to change the color, the fill color of the button, to something like maybe a lighter version of the button. And the final variant here, I could create more variants, but here I'm going to do just a couple of them. This will be our pressed state. There is also focus state, there is also inactive state. By the way, let's create inactive. So we'll see the huge difference. Inactive state. And you see everything called property. I don't want it to be called property. I'll call it state. So I double click on the property one, state. It can be also button state, but because we already work with buttons, we don't have to do that. And for the inactive state, what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the color to completely something different, to this light gray version. And I'm also gonna change the color of the text to lighter version. So now we understand that we can't press the button, but to still have better like accessibility, I'm going to add stroke here with a light version of gray. Done. Even a little bit darker version of gray. And as you can see, I have one set called button, and inside of this set I have 3 buttons. Basically I have one button but 3 different states of it. And now I can take this button, bring it to my design, and now here you see on the right panel I have the property state, and I can choose between default, hover, or inactive. This is how it works. What we can do else to match the proportions of the design? Okay, and let's increase the size to something like 3x. So you will see, well, it's too much. 2x, perfect. Now it's an active state. I can change it to hover state, and I can change it to default state. This is specifically useful when you create different states of the same like web page. You have a web page. Inside of the web page you have section. Inside of the section you have buttons, and then you will have these different states of the button to show to designers, not to designers, to maybe to other designers, but to show to developers how different states of the button work. And what's also cool about this element here, that because it's a component, you can select, you can make changes in your variants here, and they will apply directly to the component that you created on the other side. As you can see now, the state previously for this variant, we have the state on and off, and that's exactly how it works. So we have switch equals on and off. This called state for the button, the property here, state, default, state, hover. But what else I can do if I change state to on, for example, and here I change state to off, and that's it, it's just inactive. When I go here, it's still on and off and inactive. But if I remove the final option, delete, now I just have 2 options here. When I select the button, now I have only 2 states, on and off. Well, hover, we can call it hover and default. Just keep it in mind that naming is important. Again, this is like more advanced thing, and we will discuss different naming of variants a little bit later in the course when we'll start creating design system in the web design module. But here, this is what you just need to learn, and it will be more than enough for you to understand about variants and modules. Just one additional thing that I want to show you about variants is you can use variants if you create, for example, checklists. You might be thinking like, yeah, I can use it for mobile apps, I can use it for websites. But what if I'm a graphic designer? Can I use variants as well? Well, yes. I remember I created a checklist, and for that checklist I had to show different states of the checklist, and to show it, to use it to my client, I just created a variant like state on and off, and the client was just mind blown that I could show it directly during the presentation how it works. And how to create that checkbox, check marks? Well, in order to do that, you just create a rectangle first, like this. We will make the rounded corners like 2 points. The second thing, Shift X to switch to the stroke mode. I'll change the color to something like this. I'll make the stroke a little bit bigger too. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create inside of it using pen tool the check mark itself. And for the check mark, I'll also set the change the color and also the weight of the stroke to 3. So now I have this checkbox. What I'm gonna do now, Command Option K. Now I have a component and I call it check on. Now what I'm gonna do, I press plus, and for this one I just remove completely this checkbox, and for this state I will call it, well, now I have default and variant 2. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna change the name of the second one to off and the name of the first one to on, and the property will call check on off. That's it. This is how fast I created this checkbox component that has two properties, on and off. And now if I decide, for example, here to create something like checklist task 1, let's change the size of it to something that will match our properties that we created here. Now I take the element, let's take the state off to my design. Here I'll set 30, perfect. Let's use, by the way, enter, so you will have the same element there. Now I can create an auto layout out of it. I can group it together. I can create a component out of it itself. I can do so many different things that will make this design more flexible, but because we're just practicing, we'll create it later in next modules, but because we're just practicing here, let's go really simple. Let's just group it together. Let's call it line, just line 1. And now let's duplicate it just 3 times. Change to task 2, task 3, task 4, and that's it. This is our checklist: task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4. But now when I select this element here, checkbox, I have check on and off because I used variants. And when I click on, now this task is completed, this task is completed, done. And here's how variants work. So simply follow every single step of this lesson, of this tutorial. Create different variants, play with them, make some changes so you understand how it works. Maybe once you created like these 2 options, you can create another option that will be, let's create something funny, something in between. Oh, I'm not sure like whether it should be on and off. And now we have 3 properties, but it means that now I don't have the option on and off like before. Remember the switcher? Because we have 3 options and Boolean type works only for on and off, just 2 options. Because of that, I have switch 3. Let's change it to on, off, and this, the name of this option will be, not sure. Use variants, and here, not sure. And that's it. Of course, this component doesn't exist, but when you make something fun, your brain will remember it much, much faster. So that's why it's so cool to practice, honestly. And that's why it's so cool to create something. First of all, you see the results. And secondly, it's something, when it's something fun, your brain understands that, oh, if it's fun, then it's safe. If it's safe, then I can remember it, I can use it later because it causes good emotions. So it will go to your brain, to your long-term memory much faster and will stay there forever. And that's why my recommendation for you, practice and have fun with something. Like this component doesn't exist and we will never see that. And I don't recommend it to use it in real applications. Well, if you're creating like a fun real application, of course use that. But go play, have fun, create variants, play with them. This is how you remember how everything works. And in the next lesson, I'll show you how to use these variants to create interactive components. And this is where we also discussed for the first time, the prototype mode and how to see your designs in the prototype mode and how to play with them, actually interact with them. Click on the button, see the hover states, like all these things. See you in the next lesson. And now just go and practice. Before going to next lesson, go and practice first. Okay, with variants. Once you practice that, that's it. Then practice, okay, go to the next lesson where we'll talk about interactive components. See you there. Interactive components. What? Yeah, you already know about components, component properties, auto layouts, and variants. Today we'll be talking about interactive components, how to create one, how to use them, what they look like, and wow, this will be incredible. Well, what is an interactive component? Interactive component is, you know, from the name, it's a component you can interact with. Yeah, in the previous lesson you already learned how to use variants, and basically what is variant? Variant allows you to create a set of components and where you have component of a different state. And previously you saw that we can switch different states for these components. Today we'll create interactive components that you can use in your prototypes for micro interactions, for showing them to your clients, to impress your colleagues, to I don't know, to impress your boss, your managers, or maybe to create something fun just for yourself. How to do that and what is an interactive component? Let's dive in, let's create one. From the previous lesson, you have all these things. I hope that you follow the lessons and you practice and you create exactly what I'm creating in these lessons, because practice is the most important. And I'm trying to explain everything in the simple terms so you can go step by step just by creating simple components. Then you can create something more complex, because you understand that the most complex things consist of really simple basic ones. So that's exactly what we created in the previous lesson about variants. We have switcher, we have button with different states, and we have checkboxes, check mark. Now, interactive component. What is that? That's exactly where we'll learn and we'll start touching the prototype mode. Well, let me close the prototype mode first. So here, as you remember, we created this design before, and this is a simple switcher, and when I click on and off, we see how it works. Now, when I just click this play button, present, I'll see the prototype mode of that design, of that frame that I created before. And now when I click here, nothing is happening, just nothing. But I want something to be happen because I interact, I touch this element, I click on this checkbox, I want to hover on this button. But nothing happens here because now it's just static design, just picture. But we, as UX UI designers, as designers in general, we want to create something people will enjoy using and they will actually use it. Whether they read the content with their eyes, we want to provide the best readability and legibility. Whether we create websites, we want people to see what's happening when they hover on the button, or when they select text, when they click on that switcher. And when we create mobile applications, we want to interact with them as well. And this is where we need these variants and interactive components. Let's start with a switcher first, and then we'll create interactive component for everything else. Well, in order to create an interactive component, you don't have to create something new. I mean, new elements in the design. What you need to do, you need to switch here to the second tab on the right sidebar from the design tab to prototype mode. Click there. And then once you click, now something has changed here as well. Now you see when you hover on the elements, you see some additional like dots appear. And when you hover on these dots, you see the plus sign. Well, that's exactly how you create connections in Figma between different elements, between frames, between components, between the element and the frame. This is how you create animations and micro interactions and any kind of motion UI design. If you want to learn more about motion UI design, yeah, there is a masterclass for that. How to create interactive component. So you go to the prototype mode. In the design mode, you don't see these dots here anywhere. But when you go to the prototype mode, now you see them. You can, no matter where you will start creating them from, just select one dot, click on it, and by holding the cursor on this dot, exactly on the dot, you will see the arrow. Start dragging it to another element inside of your variants. So you see the variation set, two components inside of it. So simply, let me remove it, do it again. Simply hover on the dot, click there, and by holding, just drag this arrow to the next element inside of the variants. Now you will see this arrow, and once this arrow is created, this is how you created a connection between the first element and the second one. And immediately you will see interaction details model screen on the right sidebar. When you see that, you will see here the triggers option, triggers menu. And this is exactly what you can choose from on tap, on drag, while hovering, like mouse enter, on none. So we will need something. So we want on tap something to happen. Now everything disappeared because it's selected none. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it again. So on tap, what to do next? Change to, and I set switch on. This is where I select the switch off. No, switch on. And here at the bottom, most likely you will see something like instant by default. But you can choose here dissolve or smart animate. We will not discuss these things here over the course. We'll discuss all of, not all of them, some of them, when we'll create some advanced animations in the web design or mobile apps design, or even for content creation. But here, let's just focus on two things, instant and smart animate. We'll discuss two of them. If you want to learn everything about triggers, about all these things that you see here, Motion UI Design Masterclass will be the best for you. Right now, we will focus on instant, because for the switcher, we want to see only like the mode on and off. We don't want to see this micro interaction. But if you want to, I'll show you how it works and how to create one. For now, just keep it instant here. And that's it. But when we click on this button, we will switch to the next state on tap. That's perfect. But what if I click on the switcher when it's already in the position on? Probably nothing. To test that, you see, I just created this connection here. I'm not going to do anything else. I'll just go back to my prototype mode and try to click here on the switcher again. And boom, you see, it switched here in the prototype mode. And that's exactly what you can share with the client or show to other people in your team And they will see that, oh my God, I can interact with that. Moreover, you can share this prototype via the Figma Mirror app, and you will see all these interactions. You can interact with them with your fingers. But now let's click. This is the power of interactive components. But now I'm going to click it again. I click and nothing, as you can see, nothing is happening. Why so? Well, because we haven't created the interaction, because it's interactive component. What should happen when we click from the position on to off? So that's why, while in the prototype mode, I select another element, the second element. I click on the dot here and I create connection with the previous element. This is how I create a connection from this state to the previous state. On tap, change to, switch off, correct, instant. Perfect. That's it. I'm not going to do anything else. So I just go to the prototype mode again. I click, and by clicking now, I interact with this element. I just click, and I see that it's changing its state from off to on and from on to off. We just created an interactive component. This is how it works, super simple on this simple element. And this is how you can see the difference between just components, between components and variants, and between variants and interactive components. In order to create an interactive component, you should have a set of variants. So you should have variants. Inside of it, you'll have different states, and then you can create these interactive components. And then later you can use this interactive component to create micro interactions, to switch the theme from dark to light. You can create so many different things. For right now, just learn how to use it. Follow me step by step in this lesson, and then you will understand the basics of interactive components, and you will be able to use them for everything else. One additional thing before we go further with all other elements, let's do one additional thing. Let's create, previously we had this instant animation here. I'm gonna change it right now, but before that I want to show you what I do here. As you can see, now I can hover on these arrows on the connection between elements, and when I click on them, I'll see this model again, and this is how I can make all the changes here. So just keep it in mind that you can do that. And now for the animation, I will set the Smart Animate. And when I click Smart Animate, I see additional set of parameters that I can change. And here I have different easing options. And here I have the timing. How it works, Smart Animate will take the elements with the same name from the previous component, compare them to the same names in the next component, and if they change their values, it will create a smart animation between the first and the second one. This should be a really full masterclass, and I already created that Motion UI design. Check it there if you want to learn more about animations. Right now, I just want to show you what will happen if here I will set something like 1 second. And now, when I do the same for the back state, but 300 milliseconds, let's keep it here. Now, when I go to the prototyping mode, when I click on the switcher, you see it switches with time. It takes 1 second, 1 full second, to go for this component, for this switcher, from the state off to the state on. When I click again to go from state off to from state on to state off, it takes just 300 milliseconds. 1 second, 300 milliseconds. When it comes to timing, the bigger the element, the more time it should take. The smaller the element, the faster the animation should take. So in this case, I would recommend you to, when you animate something, like for micro interactions, to go with the option like something 200 milliseconds, for example. And when you go, oh, it's going back. When you go back, when you create animation back, it should be a little bit faster than when you go to the position on. So in this case, we will go back with 100 milliseconds, and we will go to the position on with 150 milliseconds. And now it will be really fast, but at the same time, it will still be visible that now you see that it's flowing. It's not just switching. You see that the element is actually going to the next position. And that's why Smart Animate is so cool and why it's so powerful for the animations. But the most important, that you just learned how to create interactive components. You see, and it looks so real. And when you create something like that and we'll see it in the Figma Mirror app, you will see how real it is. So you can interact and it responds to your interaction. Now let's create some more interactive components so you can practice and understand how they work. And in the future, it will be super easy for you to create interactive components anytime you need them. So for the button, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create just only one interactive component for the hover state. I could create also another component for the pressed state, for example, but it doesn't make sense for us to create an interactive component where the button is inactive, because inactive state, it just means that you can't click on that, and that's it. So that's why I'm going to create just the hover state. So we have our default state of the button and we have our hover state. Now I'm gonna, while in the prototyping mode, I create a connection. And now for this connection, when we create just hover state, instead of tap trigger here, I select while hovering. And when I click while hovering, the connection is created. Now it will be Smart Animate, and yep, I wanna see how it changes. For easings, my recommendation for you, use just ease out or ease in out if you don't know how to use them and how they work. It will be more than enough for you to know just only these two. Sometimes I recommend to use linear in some cases. If you want to play, just select all of them one by one and see how they interact, how they look in the prototype mode. So right now we'll just use ease out, and let's see what will happen with the button, because we have button here in our design. Now I go to the interactive component. Now I'm going to hover the cursor on the button. And as you can see, it changes its state. As simple as that. If you want to go further and like, okay, I have hovering state, but what if, let's go to the design mode. And right now, what I'm going to do, here we have this plus sign, I press add variant. And for this add variant, I'll change the property from primary to pressed. So while I'm pressing the button, and for the press state, I'm going to change the color to something darker. So I click on the button, so something like this, but darker version of it. Because I click on the button, it means that it goes deeper inside of my device if it was a physical button. So that's why it's a little bit darker. But now I go to the prototype mode back, and now from the hover state, while I'm hovering, I create another connection, but now with the last state of the button, press state, and not on top, but while pressing. Animate, the same. Now I just go here. On hover, I see this. Now I press and hold, and I see the press state. I get out of the screen and release the cursor, and I see the default state. Hover, pressed. This is how you create three different, as you can see, we created 4 different variants of the button. There is the 5th one called focused, if you're creating something for accessibility and specifically for screen readers, then In any case, I recommend you to do that because it will be better from accessibility perspective. But here we have 4 states of the button: default, hover, pressed, and inactive. And then we created these interactive components, and now they are live. So now I can switch it here and I can press the button. I can switch it off and I can press the button again. Hover without pressing, I see that something is changing. But when I click on the checkbox, nothing is happening. So let's create the final interactive component in this lesson, and then you're good to go. Go and practice, create your interactive components, and that will be just mind-blowing. Later, of course, we will touch lots of them in our next modules and our next lessons, but right now it will be more than enough for you. And probably if you follow me, if you follow the mindset behind it, it will be easy for you to create absolutely any micro interaction or UI animation using even interactive components. So now I'm selecting this checkbox. I'm dragging the arrow. I create the connection with the next state. On tap, change to, correct, off, 200 milliseconds. But because we are switching it off, I'm making this animation a little bit faster. And for this, I create connection back. On tap, change to, check on. And now a little bit slower because it takes time to do something, and it takes less time to destroy or undo something. So that's why the animation back is usually faster than animation forward. That's it. I just created, as you can see, I just created 2 lines here, 2 connections. And now let's take a look what we have here. Select. I can select absolutely anything I want. I just need to, of course, to click exactly in the area. And that's why it's important to know about the tap area, that for iOS it should be 44 at least points, and for Android devices it should be at least 48 dp, or call them points if you want. For web, the clicking area depends exactly on the element that you're creating. My recommendation is don't go less than 32. As you can see, now I can do so many different interactions on just one screen. Oh, by the way, as you can see, I just click here, but when I click on the text itself, nothing is changing. But you can create the component and think about it as your homework task. Create an interactive component where you click on the text, the checkbox will be selected. I think that will be really good practice for you. You don't have to send it anywhere else, just do it for yourself and learn more about interactive components. This is how fast and easy you can create that. And as you can see, this is your design, while in the prototype mode, you will see the real interaction. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll be super happy to see you in the next one.